Hi guys. So this video, I wanted to wrap up the previous three videos where I am talking to a founder and entrepreneur who's in the early stages of envisioning a program business. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about actually crafting a plan and making sure that you have the information you need to have thought through everything in order, have the information you need about your community and your market to make sure that you can move forward with confidence in your business, in your budget, and all of that. Okay, so in the previous videos, I was talking some about the hybrid model and how it's different than a micro school. I had you kind of envision like a 5-class model with one director. That's just a very simple hybrid school model that's meeting let's just say 2 days a week for the school year, and you're charging $3,500 in tuition. So we're going to kind of keep working from that model just so you have something concrete to think about. And we talked a little bit in the other video about the pay that would be possibly realistic for that sort of model. Now, you have to this is all to kind of feed your brainstorming. This is the idea part of the process, right? This is where you get the idea. Can I do this? What would I even do? What would it look like? You're brainstorming that, right? So that's why I wanted to give you something concrete to think about. But to be realistic about whether that will work in community and whether it's something you personally would like to do, you need to kind of back way up and ask yourself, what's your mission? Why do you want to do this? And then just answer that really honestly for yourself. So it might be because you are burned out in your teaching job and you really want to just have your own business. Okay. That might be your reason, which is a totally legitimate reason. Okay. Write that down first and then put down what is it that you really, what's the heart of this? Why don't you go get some other job outside the education sector? You know what? Why is it that you want to still be in teaching? Well, is it because you love working with kids? Is it because you love a particular type of education that you want to be able to deliver, a particular philosophy or pedagogy or whatever? And this applies to whoever you are. You might be a teacher or you might be a parent who's well, this is what I want for my kids. I want them to have community. I want them to have dedicated teachers. Maybe you want them to have the experience of school, but you also want to be able to homeschool. So if you're thinking about starting a hybrid school, what is your mission, right? And you really want to take some time to think about that and just sort out, because stuff gets scrambled in your brain. You've got multiple things you have to prioritize, and you got the reality of things. You might be working part-time, you need part-time, you want to homeschool, but you also need to be able to have childcare for your kids or whatever. There's a bunch of different things you can have scrambled in your brain. So by taking the time to just say, what is my actual mission? If I had to write a mission statement for my hybrid school program, what would it be? Our hybrid school exists to deliver or to partner with parents in delivering a, fill in the blank education to children. And then you're also going to say, and this could kind of be called a vision statement as far as who are you delivering this to? You can be a little more practical. We exist to serve K through 4th grade children with a nature-based early elementary education program, or where you get a little more specific on who are you delivering this to? It might be a classical high school. It might be a pre-K through 2nd grade or whatever. And again, you could do a whole school if you wanted to. But think about what the vision would be. Do you want to someday have a full school? Then don't put in specifics about the grade or the age, in your vision statement. Put in to serve just more generic, but do that intentionally. What is your vision? And remember that, this can change later, but remember that a larger program is a lot more administration, a lot more complex, a lot more budgeting, a lot more buildings based. So you might just say, well, I'm just going to write my mission and vision statement for my first 2 years, and then we'll redo it in a couple of years, which I would definitely recommend doing. But it's good to think through that because your vision is probably going to be informed by your mission. Okay. You might just, your heart might really be to see children under the age of 10 be able to move and, like be outside a lot and have community or learn to read in a particular way or both of those things or whatever. And then that's like really where your heart is. So like, that's just going to be able to help you zero in on that. So that would be like the first thing you should do. And you can just kind of like brush off all of the distractions and you can bring those back in later about like the reality of things. You're going to bring that back in later, but you just start with that. And then I really would suggest, and I walk you through all this in the strategic planning course. I take you through these steps in more detail, which you can find on my Start Hybrid School website. But after you've done that mission and vision statement, then you want to like, you would need to go out and figure out like what your market is doing. So you might be looking at your competition. Like, are there, like if your passion is for, maybe Montessori or Waldorf schools or classical or whatever, are there any of those schools out there? And how are they doing? Are there charter schools or the private schools? How much do they cost? Do they have wait lists? Are they struggling? Like, do they not exist at all? Like, you just want to like, it's not a super complex thing. You're just taking the time to look around and see what's going on. And that's like a fairly simple thing to do. You also kind of want to like take a look at your demographics. Like, are you in a highly populated area? Do people have disposable income in the sense that are they paying for like preschools and stuff like that? Or are they, because if nobody is paying, $2,000 to $3,000 for preschool for their 4-year-old, then that could be indicative of like just what the market is how the market is going to react. But if you've got just preschools all over the place that are just full of kids, and especially the ones that are maybe play-based or whatever, again, this would be like, let's say you had a Waldorf style K through 4th grade or something. And that was your vision. And then you looked around and you saw like the Waldorf preschool is just like doing really well. They've got a wait list. And everybody pays for preschool and they're paying $3,000 or $4,000. Okay, well, and there's no Waldorf school around anywhere. Like, that probably means there is a huge gaping hole in the market just waiting for you to fill it, right? But if you're in a very low populated area, or there's already schools on every corner, or maybe people just are happy with their choices, that you just want to like take kind of an assessment of that. And then I really would suggest starting to gauge the interest with actual real people. So you can do this just by talking to the people that you know, to start with 1 or 2 people, asking them what they've done, what they're doing, what their plans are. You can also do like an interest meeting. You can, after you get the word out a little bit, you can like just say, hey, we're going to meet at the park or at the library, and we're just going to like have an interest meeting. I'm just going to tell you about this idea I have. And you can, see if anybody shows up. And you want to get a little momentum with like the conversations first. But you can use social media to like, throw things out there like about the interest meeting. Maybe have 2 or 3 of them over the course of a couple months, just to like let people go home. If 3 people come to the first one and they go home and they're like, that's a really interesting idea, I want to tell my sister about it, or my friend, or my neighbor, or whatever. And then tell them like, we're having another interest meeting, and you can kind of get people to show up. Make sure you get their information, like contact information. Don't lose them after they walk out the door. May have done that one time. And then make sure that you're, keeping in touch with them, but you also want to hear from them. So you're not just sharing your vision. You also want to hear from them. And like, how old are their kids? What are they already doing? If you get a whole bunch of people with like 3 and 4-year-olds who aren't even in school yet showing up, that tells you something. If you get a bunch of people with older kids show up, that tells you something. If the people with older kids who are already in school maybe show up, and maybe they are there because they're not happy with whatever they're doing, but then they're kind of like, yeah, my kid likes his friends, I don't know if we're going to change. And like, that tells you something too, right? So you're gauging interest, seeing where people's needs are, and then you're also like telling them, you're kind of planting the seed of the idea. I would really recommend going through a couple-month process to do that. And that's what I talk about in strategic planning, the market research part. And you can get like the guide on my website for free. But you just want to like make sure that you understand your market, and if they want what it is, your mission that you already wrote out, that they want that. Okay. And then you're like well on your way to coming up with your plan. Because now you're hearing from, in a strategic plan, like in business strategic plan, they talk about like getting input from your stakeholders, like the people who have a stake in the success of your organization, which in this case would be like your families, right? Right now you don't have employees yet. Later you will. But for now, you just want to hear from these kids that you want to serve and the parents that you want to serve. So, and yourself, because you're the founder. So you're also giving your input, right, as a stakeholder. And I also talk a little bit about like part of the stake that you have as a founder is like also the practical side of it. Like, do you need to work a full-time job? Do you need to have a particular income? Like, how much time do you have? Not just like your mission, but like what's actually the realities you're going to have to deal with, right? When I was starting, I was pouring a ton of time and I loved the work, but like the reality was I had a baby and I had like basically zero childcare. And then I spent years trying to like cobble together childcare while not getting, paid a whole lot and having paid babysitters a lot. Babysitters are making more money than which I would not recommend. I'm, sharing what I learned from that. But like, if that's just the reality of your situation, then that doesn't mean you can't do it, but it does mean that you're just taking stock of that reality and you're plugging it into your plan. And then once you've done that, you can kind of like step back and, write this stuff down, just like a summary of it, and then think about your mission. And then you want to look, okay, so assuming that you find out there is a need for this and your mission, then you can say, okay, we can go forward with this. And now I'm going to come up with my first year plan. Okay. Then I'm also going to come up with like a plan for maybe 3 years out. So I might start with a kindergarten and a first grade, but my plan is to go up to fourth grade and then I'm going to stop. Or I'm going to just keep growing with the kids and we'll see how it goes. Like you may not really know, but you want to have some sort of like, well, at least for the first year and the third year, this is what our plan is. You're also going to have to do the financials, right, on that. So like, it might be great to just start with 10 kids and one teacher, and you might be able to do that. You might, but you want to be able to run the numbers first because it might make more sense to start with 20 or 25 kids. You might want 8 kids in a class, so you can have a really small class. But the only way to afford a teacher and the administration and the infrastructure and the rent for that, or if you only had 8 kids in a class, you don't need a whole lot of space, I guess. But the only way to afford that might be to charge really high tuition. And then then all of a sudden your market goes away because you have to charge so much. So even though you might want 8 or 9 kids in a class, you might actually need to have 13 or 14 just because of the reality of the cost. So you want to be able to run through those finances. So your mission and vision statement, your market research, and then your finances are 3 really big pieces that you want to put into like what your plan is for this program. And you just want that plan to be like, you want to feel pretty confident about it, even though it's all, scary to start a new program, and that's fine. And there's going to be times when you're like, oh my gosh, I hope this works. I definitely have that feeling a lot. But if you've kind of done your due diligence and you've talked to people and you're keeping your eyes, another thing I'll say about like a mission statement is as you talk to people, sometimes a lot of times you get people's input, you get their opinions on things. And it can be easy to be like, oh, well, they only want a 1-day program and I was going to do a 2-day program. They want to know if they can, hang out and volunteer and then they don't have to pay the full tuition, or they just want to take math and science. They don't want to take reading and like, well, they think that we need to read these types of books and not these types of books. And like, if you're not really clear on your mission statement and your vision, all of a sudden you're getting like, oh no, how do I please this person? How do I please that person? That's not what they want. In my experience, if you're confident in what you're building, like what you believe in and what you are going to deliver, and then you then deliver it well, like you do have to do a good job. You have to do a good job at it. You have to be professional. You have to do your due diligence. You have to make sure that you're offering a high quality program. You can't be like sloppy about it, which sometimes it's not like intentional sloppiness. It's just that like you're so focused on the one part you really love that you like hope that the other parts will come together because you really don't want to learn about them, which is totally understandable. I have been there before. But like you have to understand the bookkeeping. Like you have to understand the bookkeeping enough to make sure it gets done right. You have to understand how to manage the student information or the safety or whatever enough to like you need to be able to deliver a high quality program. So if you're delivering a high quality program and you're really clear in your mission statement, people have confidence, a lot more confidence in you. where when you're presenting and you're a little like, and I'll be careful how I say this, because like you want to be clear on your vision and your research, but sometimes it's okay to not know all the answers right away. Like sometimes people ask questions and you're like, oh, I don't know. I haven't thought of that yet. I say, well, we're still figuring that out, and you might be internally panicking that you hadn't thought of that yet. That's okay a little bit. That's okay. I've totally done that, and it didn't scare very many people away. Other than maybe it scared one or two people away. The very first meeting. But in general, like, that's fine. Like, it's part of just learning. But if you're presenting like confidence in what your vision is and what your mission is, and we're looking into that, we're developing a safety plan right now. We've got part of it done, but not the other. Do you have any suggestions? You might answer the safety question like that, even though you don't have a safety plan yet. Like, you need one and you're working on it. And then people will have confidence and trust in you. So don't get sidetracked by people's opinions, I guess is what I'm getting at with that. Because if you build something, a lot of times people will come to it because they trust you and they say, okay, well, maybe I would have chosen a one-day program or whatever. But this is, I get it. I see what they're doing. I can make this work. This is good. I trust these people. This is great. And then they will come. And then people who it doesn't work for won't come. And that's fine. They're not your market. That's okay. Okay. So those are the steps that I would say as a founder, you want to make sure that you have done those. What is that? Four things: the mission and vision statement and the market research and the finances, and then writing up like that strategic plan, which again, the strategic plan, all you're doing is you're picking like 3 or 4, maybe 5, like priorities and goals. Like you can do it on one page. This is what I have to work on. Like maybe you have to find a building. maybe you have to go purchase, build, figure out all the infrastructure, the insurances and all of that stuff. It's a lot kind of in the beginning, right? But like, you just write it down. These are my top priorities. Here's kind of my rough timeline. I'm going to try to get it done by these times. I might need to go find someone to help me with this. You can write it down in 1 or 2 pages, just so it's clear. Like it's clear and it's been informed by the input from the people around you. Okay. So I would say, I would really recommend going through that process as you're thinking about it. And if you get to the end of it and you say, I just don't really think that this is like the model for me or whatever. Well, now it's better to find that out now, right? Then you might decide to, shift the age group that you're serving or make it smaller or charge more or charge less or open a micro school instead or whatever. But like, at least you're making an informed decision. So I would highly recommend that you go through those steps. And the other part that I talk about in the course, I do have a whole section that is about each of those things, but also one about your personal like strengths and weaknesses, as far as I talked about this in a previous video, making sure that you just kind of like take an assessment of yourself and make sure that you put yourself in a place where you're going to thrive in the long run. Even if you have to wear multiple hats and things you don't love doing in the beginning, that's okay, as long as you're heading in an informed way toward the thing that you really are going to thrive in. Because burnout is a very real thing, and one of the quickest ways to get burnout is to do a lot of stuff that you don't love doing for a long time, and bear more than you really need to be bearing. Again, surround yourself with good, smart people who are good at what they do and trust them to do it. And that's going to build an infrastructure for success for the business. And that's true whether it's a nonprofit or a LLC. Like, how some of those decisions get made can be a little different, but the principle still holds. Check out the course on my website if you get the chance to do that. And I hope to help you with some more of the details in some of the other playlists. So make sure to check that out.